Let us continue with our topic, hypertensive disorders in pregnancy. When a woman is found to have hypertension, she should be evaluated for its severity. Take a history to know whether there is any warning signs like headache, vomiting, blurring of vision, blindness or epigastric pain. Check the BP to see whether it is elevated or not and what is the absolute value. And do a clinical examination. Examine the cardiovascular system and respiratory system to know whether there is any evidence of cardiac failure or pulmonary edema. Coming to the obstetric examination, see whether the fundal height is corresponding to the gestational age and the fetus is in good fetal heart sound. You have to send the investigation to know any organ dysfunction, hemoglobin, hematocrit, platelet count, peripheral smear, renal function test, liver function test, evidence for hemolysis like LDH, prothrombin time, partial thromboplastin time, and urine should also be looked for any proteinuria. A fetal evaluation should be done using a CTG, see whether the NST is reactive or not, and an ultrasound with Doppler to diagnose IUGR, and especially Doppler to see whether there is any absent or reversal of flow. In preeclampsia, hemoglobin and hematocrit may be elevated due to hemoconcentration, and a normal hemoglobin may be masking an actual anemia. Renal function test we do is blood urea, serum creatinine and serum uric acid. If the blood urea is greater than 20 mg percentage or a serum creatinine value of 1.2 mg per deciliter, serum uric acid greater than 6 mg per deciliter is abnormal. Liver function test, a serum bilirubin value of greater than 1.2 mg per deciliter, SGOT and SGPT greater than 70 international unit per liter is taken as abnormal. You can see the evidence for hemolysis are LDH greater than 600 international unit per liter, platelet count less than 1 lakh, and the peripheral smear show fragmented cells, Burr cell schistocytes. And in blood there will be increase in the haptoglobulins. Coming to the coagulation profile, look for the prothrombin time and partial thromboplastin time which may be elevated, that is more than 1.5 times than the control. After the clinical examination and investigation, now we will be able to see whether there is any severe features for her. The BP if greater than 160 over 110, or there are warning symptoms like headache, blurring of vision, epigastric pain, vomiting, etc. Investigation showing any evidence of organ dysfunction, or clinically there is evidence of pulmonary edema, cardiac failure, etc. And the fetus evaluation showing abnormality in the CTG like features of hypoxia, or IUGR, especially when the Doppler show abnormality like reversal or absent diastolic flow. After diagnosing a woman with severe features of preeclampsia, how to manage her? The steps in management are control of blood pressure, steps to prevent convulsion, and decision on obstetric management. How do we control hypertension? The drugs usually used are nifedipine, which is a calcium channel blocker, labetalol, which is an alpha and beta blocker, tau hydrolysin, which is a peripheral vasodilator, and methyl dopa, which is a centrally acting drug. The dose, how to give, and the side effects of each drug are shown in the table. We can use single drug or a combination of 1 or 2 or even 3 drugs can be used. And these are the primary drugs. But you have to remember that angiotensin converting enzymes and angiotensin receptor blockade enzymes, these two drugs are absolutely contraindicated in pregnancy because they will produce oligomnios and growth restriction in the fetus. And there is no role for diuretics in control of hypertension in pregnancy. When the BP is more than or equal to 160/110, it is a hypertensive emergency because left untreated, complications like eclampsia, intracranial hemorrhage, pulmonary edema, left ventricular failure, abruption, etc. can occur. So it is mandatory that the blood sugar should be brought down immediately, and the oral drugs may not be suitable for that. The primary drugs used to control hypertension in a hypertensive emergency is injection labetalol, injection hydralazine, and capsule nifedipine. Injection labetalol can be used 10 to 20 milligram slow IV as a loading dose. Check BP after 20 to 30 minutes. If the target blood pressure is not attained, repeat the dose at the dose of 20 to 80 milligram up to a maximum dose of 20 to 20 milligram until the target blood pressure is achieved. Or alternatively, a continuous infusion can be started at a rate of 1 to 2 milligram per minute. Injection hydralazine 5 milligram slow IV can be given as a loading dose. Check BP after 30 minutes. If target blood pressure not attained, repeat 5 to 10 milligram and again monitor the BP. Or you can give a continuous infusion of 0.5 to 1 milligram per hour as a continuous infusion. You can use capsule nifedipine orally 10 to 20 milligram. Check BP after 20 to 30 minutes, and if not attaining the target value, can repeat the dose every 20 to 30 minutes until a maximum dose of 90 milligram. While giving nifedipine capsule, remember not to give sublingually or chew or break the capsule because it will cause sudden fall in the BP and that will result in myocardial ischemia. These three primary drugs can be used in singly or in combination, and if it is not possible to control the hypertension with that, you can use second line drug like sodium nitroprusside or trinitroglycerin, which is given as an infusion and in a titrated dose. While controlling hypertension in an emergency, take care to avoid acute lowering of blood pressure. We should target to get a 25% reduction in BP in the first hour and attain target blood pressure in the next 5 to 6 hours. When we say target blood pressure, we mean less than or equal to 145/95 millimeters of mercury, and do not try to attain normal BP because sudden lowering or normalization of blood pressure will affect fetus and maternal organs adversely. While we take steps to control blood pressure, attention should be given to prevent convulsion. Magnesium sulfate is a drug used for preventing convulsion. Should be given as a loading dose of 4 gram, 20% solution, diluted in 100 ml saline to be run in 15 to 20 minutes. After that, 1 gram per hour of a 20% solution in saline should be given as maintenance dose for 24 hours. Magnesium sulfate is a neuroparalytic drug acting on the neuromuscular receptors, and if blood level exceeds a certain limit, that will produce neurological paralysis. So we have to look for signs of toxicity. The magnesium sulfate toxicity affects the deep tendon reflexes first, and still the blood level goes high. It may affect the respiratory muscles, causing respiratory failure. When the renal dysfunction is there, the excretion of the drug will be affected and toxicity will appear even at a lower level. So during magnesium sulfate infusion, check the knee jerk. Look for the respiratory rate. It should be more than 16 per minute, and the urine output should be greater than 30 ml per hour. If knee jerk is absent or respiratory rate is less than 16 per minute or the urine output is less than 30 ml per hour, you have to withhold magnesium sulfate. After taking steps to control BP and prevent convulsion, and when the patient is stabilized, now we have to decide on obstetric management, and it depends on the gestational age and the severity of the problem. If the gestational age is greater than or equal to 34 weeks, take steps to terminate pregnancy in preeclampsia with severe features. If the gestational age is less than 34 weeks, if there is evidence of maternal organ dysfunction like abnormal LFT, RFT, hemolysis, or warning signs, then take steps to terminate pregnancy even if the gestational age is less than 34 weeks. Also, in spite of our attempt to control BP with the drugs for 6 to 8 hours, if the BP remains uncontrolled, again that is an indication to terminate the pregnancy. If the gestational age is less than 34 weeks and there is no evidence of maternal organ dysfunction and BP is controlled, we can go for an expectant management. Can give antenatal corticosteroids, that is betamethasone injection 12 mg, 2 doses 12 to 24 hours apart. Monitor the well-being of the mother by checking BP twice daily. Repeat the investigation daily, and fetal surveillance should be done using NST, weekly biophysical profile. Continue the pregnancy up to 34 weeks and then terminate. Or earlier termination may be indicated if fetal or maternal condition deteriorate. When there is IUGR and gestational age is less than 34 weeks, provided the maternal condition is stable and BP controlled, we can continue the pregnancy with corticosteroid injection to accelerate lung maturity, weekly or alternate day Doppler, daily NST, and continue the pregnancy up to 34 weeks and terminate at 34 weeks. Or earlier termination may be necessary depending upon the Doppler finding, which shows absence or reversal of diastolic flow. After deciding for termination of pregnancy, we have to decide on what is the route of termination of pregnancy, whether to opt for a cesarean section or go for a vaginal delivery. The indication for cesarean section are if BP is not controlled by 6 to 8 hours, the fetus showing abnormal CTG or a abnormal Doppler, and the service is unfavorable and we need an emergency termination of pregnancy. And if there is presence of obstetric indication like an abnormal presentation, abnormal placenta previa, etc. In all other cases, vaginal delivery can be tried if service is favorable. There is no absolute contraindication for induction, but you should avoid prolonged induction. And during intrapartum, there will be chances of fetal hypoxia and fetus developing distress. So, continuous electronic fetal monitoring is mandatory during labor. One of the complications that occur in a pre-eclamptic woman is eclampsia. Eclampsia is newly onset convulsion or coma in a woman with preeclampsia without any obvious other causes for convulsion or coma during pregnancy or postpartum. Rarely, convulsion can occur before the onset of hypertension or proteinuria. The word eclampsia is derived from the Greek word meaning flashes of light. It can occur in the antepartum period, intrapartum, or postpartum. Rarely, after having a convulsion, the woman may continue the pregnancy, and then it is called a intercurrent eclampsia, which is very rare. Late postpartum eclampsia is when convulsion develops after 48 hours but within 4 weeks after delivery. It is a form of atypical eclampsia. Eclampsia is a sign that the preeclampsia has affected the brain. Brain has the property of autoregulation, which means the blood flow to the brain remains constant in spite of fluctuation in the blood pressure. But when the BP suddenly shoot up or when there is a rise in BP, overcome the threshold, the property of autoregulation is lost. This will lead to increase in the blood flow to the brain. There will be exudation of plasma resulting in cerebral edema. There will be petechial hemorrhages and thrombosis. When the CT imaging is done, most often the finding is what we call the PRES or posterior reversible encephalopathy syndrome, in which you can see localized hyperintense lesion seen at the gray-white matter junction, primarily in the occipital lobe. Epileptic seizures can be described in 5 phases: prodromal phase, tonic phase, clonic phase, recovery phase. To begin with is a prodromal phase where the patient experiences some aura like headache, vomiting or flashes of light, followed by there can be convulsive movement around the face. After that she goes to the tonic phase when the entire body becomes rigid, face becomes contorted, respiration ceases. This may last for 15 to 20 seconds. Then comes the clonic phase, where the typical grand mal conversion sets in. There can be frothing of the mouth. This will last for about 1 minute. In the recovery phase, convulsions subside, the respiration resumes, and the woman may go into a variable period of coma or stupor. Differential diagnoses to be considered in eclampsia are epilepsy, cerebrovascular accident, cerebral venous thrombosis, cerebral infections like encephalitis, meningitis, cerebral malaria, metabolic disturbances, ruptured aneurysm. But always remember, any pregnant woman with convulsion should be considered as having eclampsia unless otherwise proved. Let us see what are the complications that can occur in eclampsia. There is a chance of losing the mother about 2% due to intracranial hemorrhage or due to cardiovascular complication. There is a 30% chance of perinatal mortality due to prematurity, hypoxia, or due to effect of the drugs. She can also develop renal failure, abruption, HERPS syndrome, pulmonary edema, adult respiratory distress syndrome. There can be complications like aspiration pneumonia, sustained injury due to fall from the bed, or falling on a sharp object. The investigation to be done in eclampsia are the same as we do in severe pre-eclampsia, like urine for proteinuria, hemoglobin, hematocrit, platelet count, Pap smear, LFT, RFT, LDH, random blood sugar, serum electrolytes. A MRI or MR venogram is indicated only when there is an atypical eclampsia, prolonged coma, recurrent convulsions, not responding to magnesium sulfate, focal neurological defects, to rule out other cerebral causes of convulsion. Coming to the management of eclampsia, it is described in 4 steps, like general measures, control of hypertension, control of convulsion, and obstetric management. Though described separately, it should be instituted simultaneously. General measures in eclampsia are similar to the care of an unconscious patient. During a convulsion, prevent injury by falling from the bed or falling on a sharp object in the surrounding. She may aspirate from her own vomitus, or the tongue may fall backward and obstruct the airway. An unconscious patient may not blink and the eyes become dry, causing exposure keratitis and end up in blindness. So the eyes should be kept closed after applying antibiotic. She can develop bed sore, so that should be prevented. The bladder should be catheterized to prevent frequent disturbance, and it also will help in monitoring the urine output. Control of BP is the most important step, and it will also help in controlling the convulsion and prevent development of further complication. The primary drugs we use are labetalol, hydralazine, CAP, nifedipine, which has been dealt with in control of hypertensive emergency. If the first line drugs are not able to control, we can go for the second line drugs like trinitroglycerin or sodium nitroprusside given as an infusion and given in titrated dose. For control of convulsion, magnesium sulfate is a drug of choice in eclampsia. It should be given as a loading dose of 4 gram of a 20% solution in 100 ml saline to be run in 15 to 20 minutes. This is followed by maintenance dose of 1 gram per hour, and this maintenance dose should be continued for 24 hours after delivery or after the last convulsion, whichever is later. And you have to take all the precautions of giving magnesium sulfate as we have dealt earlier. If there is any contraindication for magnesium sulfate, like in patients with renal failure or myasthenia gravis, then we may have to give phenytoin sodium injection 200 to 600 mg slow IV as a static dose, and this is followed by a maintenance dose of 100 to 200 mg IV 8th hour. In status eclampticus, where there is a continual convulsion, magnesium sulfate or phenytoin may not be helpful. You have to give midazolam or lorazepam as slow IV. Even if it is not controlled, you may resort to thiopentone sodium intravenously. When this drug is given, you have to intubate the patient and electively ventilate. After stabilizing the patient by taking steps to control the blood pressure and convulsion, we have to take steps to terminate the pregnancy. Unless the pregnancy is terminated, her condition may not improve. And deciding on termination, we have to see what is the route of delivery, whether there is any indication for cesarean section. If the cervix is unfavorable, that is an indication for cesarean section. Again, if the BP is uncontrolled or if there is convulsion, even after 6 to 8 hours of treatment, or if there is a obstetric indication, then we have to resort for LSES. All other patients with a favorable cervix can be given or tried for a vaginal delivery. And during labor, monitor the mother closely for any increase in the BP, urine output, and any signs of pulmonary edema or cardiac failure. The fetus should be continuously monitored for evidence of fetal distress. During the second stage, should be helped out using forceps. In the third stage, methergine is contraindicated. You have to adopt active management of third stage of labor to limit the blood loss. In the postpartum period, continue close monitoring of BP and antihypertensive. Magnesium sulfate should be continued for at least 24 hours after delivery or 24 hours after the last conversion, whichever is later. Repeat the investigation. Make sure the investigations are normal. Sometimes she may develop abnormal investigation even in the puerperium. In the normal condition, a rapid recovery is anticipated and she can be fit for discharge after 1 week, and only discharge her with the BPs well controlled. HELLP syndrome is another complication that can occur in women with preeclampsia. It is a severe form of preeclampsia. There is hemolysis, elevated liver enzyme, and low platelet. All factors may not be present always, then we call it as a partial HELLP. Since it is a severe form of preeclampsia, termination of pregnancy is indicated irrespective of gestational age. Coagulation abnormality may be present, and you have to correct by giving fresh frozen plasma and or platelet as needed before CS or delivery. Coming to the differential diagnosis of HELLP syndrome, acute fatty liver of pregnancy, cholestatic jaundice, thrombotic thrombocytopenia purpura, hemolytic uremic syndrome, hepatitis, etc. should be considered. The details of which will be dealt with in the topic jaundice in pregnancy. Management of HELLP syndrome is the same as we do in severe preeclampsia. In addition, there can be coagulation abnormality which should be taken care of if present by giving fresh frozen plasma and or platelet before we go into delivery. Prognosis is usually good and recovery rapid after delivery. If there is a delay in recovery, think of other differential diagnoses like acute fatty liver of pregnancy, thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura, hemolytic uremic syndrome, etc. Coming to the long-term prognosis in women with hypertensive disorders of pregnancy, prognosis depends on the type of hypertension the woman has. So, we have to have a postpartum checkup at 12 weeks, and if hypertension persists at 12 weeks, she should be reclassified as having essential hypertension or hypertension due to secondary causes like renal causes, SLE, like that, and should be further investigated. Coming to the prognosis, gestational hypertension and preeclampsia of late onset had a good prognosis, but this patient may have a chance of developing essential hypertension in later life. Women having early onset preeclampsia, that is onset before 34 weeks, the chance of recurrence is more in the next pregnancy. And this patient had a more chance of developing cardiovascular complication in later life. So they should be advised an yearly checkup to rule out any cardiovascular complication and should be advised on lifestyle modification. To conclude, hypertensive disorders is a common medical complication in pregnancy. It is an important cause for maternal mortality and perinatal mortality. If proper antenatal care for detection, prompt assessment and intervention is taken, this can be prevented to a certain extent. We should be aware of the long-term sequelae of hypertensive disorders, and this woman should be encouraged to have a lifestyle modification so that this complication can be prevented. Thank you.